Hello and welcome to our webcast for October 25, 2019.
And the dog too.
And the dog show too, yeah. My name is Christian Debré. The dog is a femelle with the name Strawberry in French. Fraise, a ferris. Fraise, but the ferris, quelqu'un qui féroce.
Féroce. Ferocious.
Ferocious name. Sorry. Okay. And Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet. Also joining us, Taylor Hyatt, our policy analyst and outreach coordinator. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. We believe that the choice to die is not free as long as old, ill, and disabled people don't have a free choice in where and how they live. And that must change. Today's topics, we have three topics. No appeal of Truchon decision. That's the federal election. What's next? Yeah. And except on the expert part 2, psychological condition and Julia Lamb's case. So Amy Asbrook will help you through those three subjects.
I will do my best anyway. So first topic, no appeal of the Truchon decision.
Our very mature reaction to this whole thing.
Yes,
yeah.
We are so
not really mature, but really, really well.
Very articulate.
Yeah.
Despite a major social media campaign by disability rights activists, the caretaker government of Justin Trudeau did not appeal the Truchon decision. There was no public announcement of the decision last Friday, which was the deadline for an appeal. Under the constitutional rules for what a government can do during an election period, the Attorney General could have taken action that was, quote, urgent and in the public interest, unquote. Since the appeal deadline fell before the election date, and the question of assisted suicide and euthanasia is definitely a matter of public interest, activists believed the Trudeau government should have filed the request in order to keep the question open for the next government to appeal the Truchon decision if it chose to do so. But they didn't.
They didn't.
One theory I had was, is it possible that the authorities in charge of the appeal didn't see a matter of public interest? Did they only see a radical and therefore ultimately an effective group of activists, or a niche group too small to bother paying attention to?
That's entirely possible. It's also possible that Trudeau had made the declaration publicly that he wasn't going to appeal and didn't feel like he could walk it back.
Maybe. Nobody knows.
We'll never know. Okay, so the federal election, what next? Now that the Liberals have a minority government, they will have to get the support of for any legislation they want to pass from one of the other political parties.
Yeah, but they will not have some difficulty because they have the choice between two different parties, the Bloc Québécois or the...
Yeah, exactly. An early test of their ability to work in coalition will be the changes to the medical aid in dying or MAID law. And we're not a coalition government, but it's working in coalition on an individual law.
Yeah.
The Quebec Superior Court in the Truchon case gave Parliament 6 months, or until March of 2020, to remove the eligibility requirement that the person's natural death has become reasonably foreseeable, which it declared unconstitutional. During the campaign in the French language debates, Monsieur Trudeau said the MAID is a new and evolving law that required a balance between protecting the most vulnerable people and individual rights and choice.
According to the Prime Minister, then, our choices are either to be vulnerable or exercise our rights. Why not both? What about having rights we can't exercise because of societal constraints? Coming from a party that's willing to co-opt a disability rights slogan, this is even more disappointing.
Yes,
I agree.
absolutely. The Liberal Party released 2 documents that mention disability, their party platform, and a separate disability equality statement. The party platform includes a reference to home care and palliative care and a list of priorities for cooperation with the provinces under the heading Public Health Care.
Okay, we have to know something about that. First, historically, only 35% of all platform of any kind of party in Canada was realized. But their program, the note is completely different. The score is different. 85% of the program of any party was realized after they take power. So it's not a good news for us because we have only 35% chance that it happened.
Yeah, in English, there's no distinction. There's no difference between platform and a program. So that's a little confusing.
But there is a lot of difference. The
I know.
program, if they want to, the party write for themselves inside a reunion and
Meetings, yeah.
they meeting, and they write it so they use it as what they want in the future.
Right.
But platform is just promise they do in the campaign.
Yeah, and this is the platform statement.
Yeah, so
This is
only
the public
35% was realized.
Yeah, exactly. The Liberals pledge to, quote, continue to make home care and palliative care more available across the country. How's that for specific?
And this is only the provincial power, not federal.
Right, right.
So how we will realize it, I don't know.
Well, again, it's in their list of priorities for cooperation with the provincial government. So,
yeah, but cooperation means you have something to say. But normally, they don't have anything to say.
Right.
This is
unless they fund, provide money and say this money has to be spent on X, Y, Z.
That's the way federal government always put their feet inside the provincial power.
And the provinces don't like that, but
no,
but
particularly Quebec.
But if it means that there's more palliative care, that could be a
good for
thing.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there are 3 disability-related points in the platform statement. The Liberals announced a workplace accessibility fund to match contributions from employers and school boards, providing up to $5,000 to cover the cost of an accommodation. Quote, employers and schools will continue to be required to meet their accessibility obligations under provincial and federal law, even though most employers and schools are not covered under federal law, and provincial accessibility legislation is uneven and difficult to enforce.
I think it's the same story.
Yeah. Yeah. The Liberal platform promised to double the monthly child disability benefit payment made to families of some special needs kids. And that's the direct quote, special needs kids.
Yeah, very special, very specific. So we have 2 things to realize.
Eligibility is limited to children with certain diagnoses. And there's a list of about 15 different diagnoses, different disabilities. And it's not comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination. And that's a major problem with how things work in Canada. It's so diagnosis based, not like, okay, you have a disability in the generic sense that you have a physical or mental condition that substantially limits the major life activity. That's the ADA definition. And it's a generic definition, but no, here it's all based on diagnosis. whether you get services or not. Finally, veterans will receive up to $3,000 in free counseling services before a disability claim is required. And that's in quotes. The platform also promises that we will move forward with, this is a quote, we will move forward with automatic approval for the most common disability applications, including depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. So the question is, what does move forward and automatic approval mean in practice? That's not clear from the text. And so when they make those promises, it's really hard to know what it actually means in real life. Go ahead, Taylor.
I'm intrigued and concerned by the fact that all of these disability-related promises are related to funding. Is that a limitation of government in general or of government at the federal level? Because throwing money at all these problems isn't going to fix them. How will the government ensure that the money does what it's supposed to do? And of course, the small range of diagnoses and applicable scenarios doesn't help. C'est la vie with political promises, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
It is.
Yep.
Kitty, where are you?
Okay, so the disability equality statement is mostly a bunch of platitudes. The liberals pat themselves on the back for holding the first ever national summit on youth with disabilities attended by the Prime Minister, unquote, creating the Accessible Canada Act, which they praise themselves for multiple times in the statement, signing on to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities optional protocol as well. They claim to have moved beyond, quote, nothing about us without us, unquote, to nothing without us, unquote.
And the key word is nothing.
Right. It says a lot about the liberals that they, a bunch of non-disabled politicians, would co-opt and change a motto of the disability rights movement about disability control for their sales pitch.
Yeah, or their sales pitch,
Yeah.
and we never get anything.
Yeah, I think that's kind of really screwy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
We're going to
Screwy is
take
an
over,
understatement.
which is about your empowerment. We're going to change it, and we're going to use it. Sure.
Yeah, we're going to change it so that it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Excerpts from The Expert, Part 2, Psychological Conditions and Julia Lamb's Case. Finally, we return to the expert report in the Lamb case submitted by Dr. Madeline Lee. We'll examine what Dr. Lee has to say about providing assisted suicide and euthanasia to people with psychiatric disabilities, as well as her findings concerning Julia Lamb's individual situation. Dr. Lee expresses concern about whether assisted suicide and euthanasia is the right response to mental suffering, given the poor record of doctors who don't have a mental health background in assessing even clearly irrational suicidal ideation, let alone more complex suicidality, such as the undue internal influence of mild to moderate depressive symptoms.
Yeah. If they couldn't.
Right, if they can't get the easy cases right, how are they going to get the hard ones right?
Yeah. Kind of.
Yeah. Dr. Lee, wait, that got a big from us.
Yeah.
Dr. Lee describes several factors that can lead doctors to wrongly decide someone is eligible for euthanasia. It is not clear in mental illness when a disorder is truly irremediable. Resistance to treatment is about what happened in the past, not what might happen in the future. When psychiatrists talk about treatment-resistant depression, for example, they usually mean symptoms that don't respond to antidepressant drugs without regard to other therapies or supports. Also, clinical trials don't predict each person's unique experience of the disorder or their response to a treatment. Also, unlike cancer, which can be cured or not, response to treatment for a mental illness falls on a spectrum described as symptom reduction. A person might feel somewhat better, but still be suffering. Also, cancer can be measured and observed objectively, while emotional distress can only be described as a person's own experience.
Yeah, it's our source.
Right. Psychiatric conditions do not always lead to irreversible decline. Even without treatment, some conditions get better or worse over time. And it just happens.
It happened, yeah.
The person's desires may change along with their symptoms. Dr. Lee says that the reflection period should be longer than 10 days to account for those situations.
We agree.
Yeah.
You know why? Most of the medication for those kind of condition take more than 2 years, 2 weeks, and even sometimes more than 3 weeks to just achieve a minimum effect.
Right, exactly. And so if you have to wait 2 weeks for the new medication that you're trying to maybe work, after 2.5 weeks it isn't working, you need to try a new medication, and you have to wait another 2 weeks. I mean, it's a pain in the neck.
And the government just fell back to approve ketamine, who is a better medication for some people.
Well, for some people, yes. Ketamine is an effective antidepressant and pain reliever.
Yeah.
In some cases, refusing treatment may even be harmful to the person. Dr. Lee has seen people who know that assisted suicide and euthanasia is an option, and those people are refusing to even try treatments which might relieve their suffering. And in one case, the person refused a possible cure. She says that some conditions like depression cause a lack of insight, perceived stigma, and reduce the person's motivation. She cites a 2016 study of 66 completed Dutch psychiatric euthanasia, where more than half of the people had refused at least one treatment.
Dutch study, okay, where everything should be perfect, which is not,
Right.
From their own report.
Exactly. One of those studies carried out by my hero, Dr. Scott Kim. He's my superhero. Okay.
Isn't he great?
Sarcastic. He's done a lot of really good studies. When a therapist evaluates a client's eligibility for euthanasia, it raises issues of caring, protection, abandonment, control, and respect. This can harm the therapist-client relationship and make treatment less effective. So essentially, if the therapist is giving up on the patient, then the patient gives up on themselves.
Yeah.
By approving the request for euthanasia, the clinician agrees with the client's belief that they will never feel better, reinforcing their hopelessness. And it's the therapist's job to maintain hope while the person can't hold on to it. Equal numbers of men and women request euthanasia for non-psychiatric reasons. However, the ratio of women to men seeking euthanasia for a psychiatric condition in the Netherlands is more than 2 to 1. In Belgium, over 75% of the euthanasia done for psychiatric reasons involve women. So that's 3/4. That's 3 to 1. This
Awful.
Yeah, this exceeds the known sex difference in mood disorders and personality disorders, and matches the sex ratio in suicide attempts in the general population.
Which normally are a cry for help.
Yes. And part of what we've talked about is that if you legalize euthanasia for people with psychiatric conditions, then they lose the right to cry for help by failing.
Because there is no fail with made.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, Dr. Lee says allowing assisted suicide and euthanasia for mental illness could make some doctors less vigilant in their suicide prevention efforts. Really?
Anyway, people copy. You know why we don't heard about suicide in the metro in Toronto or Montreal? Because if you talk about it, there is more
Somebody's
suicide.
going to do it.
Yeah. So if there is made, there's people who will copy.
And what do people do? Talk about it all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
The media doesn't talk about suicides in the metro. They talk about assisted suicide and euthanasia
Everywhere.
Exactly.
Oh, they just go on and on and on and on and oh my God.
And always on the side of made.
Yeah. Dr. Lee points to the advocacy of VSED, voluntary stopping eating and drinking, by some assisted suicide and euthanasia supporters as a blurring of what constitutes a suicidal act. She believes this contributes to the social contagion effect on suicide rates from legalizing medical assistance in dying for mental disorders. And here is what she has to say about Julia Lamb's circumstances. Dr. Lee believes Julia Lamb would meet all MAID eligibility criteria. Her condition is clearly progressive and incurable. She believes Ms. Lamb's mobility impairment, swallowing and breathing problems, and need for help with everyday activities are signs of an advanced state of irreversible decline. Dr. Lee states that since the definition of intolerable suffering is up to the person, when she says she is suffering enough to proceed with MAID, that satisfies the criterion. So people should not think of that as a safeguard. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Dr. Lee said that during the first year the MAID program was in effect, when Ms. Lamb filed her lawsuit, practitioners used shorter prognoses for interpreting the reasonably foreseeable natural death criteria.
Yeah, in those days, the most of doctor think about plus or minus six months.
Yeah, which is what they use in the US for assisted suicide.
Yeah.
However, with all, excuse me, with the AB decision in 2017 and the guidelines from the Canadian Association of MAID Assessors and Providers, clinicians, quote, gained comfort with extending prognostic timeframes out to many years, unquote. She believes that Ms. Lamb's natural death would be considered reasonably foreseeable. So she would meet that eligibility criteria, even though that criteria is now kaput.
Yeah.
She suggests that if Ms. Lamb is unable or unwilling to undergo the onerous, meaning burdensome, long, difficult pain in the neck, MAID evaluation process, palliative sedation, whether continuous or intermittent, would be an option and could be specified in an advance directive or authorized by a substitute decision maker. Taylor?
There we are. This report is way more helpful to us than we initially thought. We're relieved to know that Dr. Lee doesn't endorse euthanasia without reservations and recognizes many of the risks involved for people with various disabilities. At the same time, she's a pretty high-ranking official as far as the carrying out of euthanasia goes, and we can't pretend that she's all of a sudden on our side.
Yeah. I mean, she shares some of our opinions, but the very fact that she, dedicates a whole paragraph to talking about how Julia Lamb can get around the MAID evaluation process after saying that she qualifies is kind of, anyway.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okie dokie. So,
This is our job. You have to remember,
Right.
she's
She gets paid
head of the region of Toronto for MAID.
Yeah, she's the head of the MAID group for those 4 hospitals in Toronto, the
Yeah.
University Health Network.
She's paid for killing people.
Yep.
So, if you want more information about the subjects that we talk about here, because we're not always that clear, you can visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet, all one word. You can visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping out, and
Thank you,
to
Amy.
Taylor as well. And thanks to you for being there. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.